The notice taped to my front door flapped violently in the winter wind, and I knew before reading it that Patricia Henderson had struck again. My fingers were numb as I peeled the bright orange paper from the doorframe, squinting through the horizontal snow that felt like tiny needles against my face. The words were printed in aggressive bold letters, "Final notice of violation." Below that, a laundry list of complaints about my unshoveled walkway, my failure to comply with previous warnings, and a threat of immediate legal action including possible eviction proceedings if I did not clear my property within 24 hours. I checked my watch. The notice was dated 3 hours ago, right in the middle of what the National Weather Service had designated as a Level 3 snow emergency for Millbrook Heights, Ohio. I crumpled the paper and shoved it into my coat pocket, pushing through the knee-high drifts to finally reach my front door. The storm had hit us hard starting yesterday afternoon, dumping nearly 2 feet of snow with drifts reaching 4 and 5 feet in some areas. The governor had declared a state of emergency. Roads were closed. The entire town was essentially shut down. And Patricia Henderson, president of the Meadowbrook Village Homeowners Association, was threatening me with eviction because I had not shoveled my walkway during an active blizzard. I stomped the snow off my boots in the mudroom, hanging my coat on the hook, and finally allowing myself to feel the warmth of my house. My golden retriever, Max, bounded up to greet me, his tail wagging so hard his entire back end swayed. I scratched behind his ears and headed to the kitchen to make coffee, pulling the crumpled notice from my pocket and smoothing it on the counter. This was the 4th notice in 6 months. Patricia had been on my case since I moved into the neighborhood last spring. The first violation was for leaving my garbage cans visible from the street for an extra hour past pickup. The second was because my grass was allegedly a 1/4 inch too tall. The third was for parking my car on the street overnight when my garage door opener broke, and I could not get a repair person until the next day. Each violation came with a fine, escalating penalties, and threats of legal action. I had tried being diplomatic. I attended HOA meetings, smiled politely, explained my circumstances. Patricia was unmoved. She ran the Meadowbrook Village HOA like a military operation, and she seemed to take particular pleasure in targeting me. I suspected it was because I had not attended her welcome committee meeting when I first moved in, having been called away for an emergency council meeting that I could not reschedule. The coffee maker gurgled to life as I reread the notice. 24 hours to clear my walkway or face eviction proceedings. The absurdity would have been funny if it was not so genuinely threatening. HOA liens and legal action were no joke. I had seen families forced out of their homes over unpaid HOA fines that snowballed into thousands of dollars with interest and legal fees. I pulled out my phone and checked the weather radar. The storm was still active, with another 6 to 8 inches expected before it finally moved east tomorrow morning. The snow emergency remained in effect, meaning non-essential travel was prohibited, and you could actually be arrested for being on the roads without a legitimate emergency. Yet Patricia expected me to be outside shoveling. My phone buzzed with a text from Deputy Mayor Rachel Torres. She was checking in about tomorrow's emergency town council meeting, asking if we should postpone given the conditions. I replied that we would make a decision in the morning, once we could assess the situation better. As mayor of Millbrook Heights, I had been dealing with the storm crisis since yesterday, coordinating with the County Emergency Management Agency, making sure our plow crews were operating safely, and ensuring our emergency shelters were adequately staffed and supplied. The irony was not lost on me. Here I was, managing a town-wide snow emergency response, and my HOA president was threatening me with eviction for not shoveling during the active storm. I had not advertised my position as mayor to my neighbors. When I bought the house on Maple Ridge Drive, I was just Samuel Xavier, a single guy with a dog looking for a quiet place to live. The deed was in my name, not my title. I attended HOA meetings as a resident, not as an elected official. I preferred to keep my private life separate from my public role when possible. Millbrook Heights was a town of about 40,000 people, large enough that I could maintain some anonymity in my own neighborhood, small enough that people generally knew their mayor by face if not by name. Patricia Henderson apparently did not know her mayor lived 3 houses down from her. I decided to let it go for the night. I was exhausted from coordinating emergency responses, and the storm was not finished. I fed Max, heated up leftover pasta, and settled onto the couch to monitor weather updates and email from the town's emergency operations center. Around 9 o'clock, my doorbell rang. Max barked, scrambling to the door. I looked through the peephole and saw Patricia Henderson standing on my porch, bundled in a fur-trimmed parka, her face pinched with cold and irritation. I opened the door. The wind immediately tried to rip it from my hand. "Mr. Xavier," Patricia said, her voice sharp. "I see you received my notice." "I did," I replied. "I also see that there's an active Level 3 snow emergency and a state of emergency declaration." "The HOA covenants are very clear," she said, pulling a laminated sheet from her pocket. Snow immediately began accumulating on it. "All walkways must be cleared within 12 hours of snowfall cessation. You have not cleared your walkway." "The snowfall has not ceased," I pointed out. "The storm is ongoing." "The initial snowfall stopped this morning," Patricia insisted. "You should have cleared it then. Instead, you left, and now there is even more accumulation. This is unacceptable. I had to work." "That is not the HOA's concern. The rules apply equally to everyone." I took a breath, reminding myself to stay calm. "Patricia, there is a state of emergency. The governor has asked people to stay off the roads. The conditions are dangerous." "Then you should have prepared better," she said. "Other residents managed to clear their walks. Other residents did not have emergency responsibilities that required them to leave their homes." Again, not the HOA's concern. She tapped the laminated sheet. "You have until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning to have your walkway completely cleared, or I will be filing eviction proceedings with the county court. We have already assessed $1,500 in fines against your property for repeated violations. This will add another $1,000, plus legal fees." "You cannot evict someone for not shoveling during a blizzard," I said, my patience wearing thin. "The HOA covenants give us the authority to place liens and pursue legal remedies for repeated violations," Patricia said. "You signed the covenant agreement when you purchased your property. You agreed to abide by all rules. You have not. Therefore, you face the consequences." 9 o'clock tomorrow, Mr. Xavier. I would suggest you set an alarm." She turned and carefully picked her way down my unshoveled walkway, using the snow-covered railings for balance. I watched her trudge through the drifts to her SUV parked on the street, the only vehicle out in the whiteout conditions. She climbed in and drove away, her taillights disappearing into the swirling snow. I closed the door and leaned against it. Max whined, sensing my frustration. "It is fine, buddy," I muttered. "Just HOA nonsense." But it was not fine. Patricia was serious about the eviction proceedings. I knew enough about HOA law to know that homeowners associations had significant power. They could place liens, foreclose on properties, and make life miserable for residents. The process took time, and I would have opportunities to fight it, but fighting legal battles was expensive and time-consuming. Even winning would cost thousands in legal fees. The rational part of my brain told me to just go out and shovel. It would take an hour, maybe two. I could clear the walkway, comply with the notice, and avoid the whole mess, but the principle mattered. The storm was ongoing. The town was under a state of emergency. People had died in weather like this, either from exposure or from heart attacks while shoveling snow. Patricia was creating a dangerous and unreasonable demand. I slept poorly, waking several times to check the weather and monitor reports from the Emergency Operations Center. By morning, the snow had finally stopped. The sun came out, reflecting off pristine white drifts with blinding intensity. The thermometer outside my kitchen window read 11 degrees Fahrenheit. My phone rang at 7:30. It was Tom Chen, the town's public works director. "Morning, Mayor," he said. "Roads are clearing nicely. We should have main routes passable by noon, residential streets by this evening." "Excellent work, Tom. Any injuries or incidents overnight?" "Minor fender bender on Route 42, no injuries." One elderly resident had to be transported from a shelter back home. Otherwise, smooth operations. "Good. Let's plan on the emergency meeting for 2 o'clock this afternoon at Town Hall. Send out the notice." "Will do. You need anything?" I glanced at my walkway, still buried under 2 feet of snow. "No, I am good. Thanks, Tom." After I hung up, I made breakfast and checked my emails. Multiple messages from concerned citizens, all of which my staff was handling. A few requiring my direct attention, which I answered. Then, at 8:45, my doorbell rang again. Patricia Henderson stood there with 2 other people I recognized from HOA meetings. Margaret Danner, the HOA vice president, and Robert Green, the HOA treasurer. All 3 were dressed formally despite the snow, like they were attending a business meeting. "Mr. Xavier," Patricia said when I opened the door, "I see your walkway remains uncleared." "The storm just ended a few hours ago," I replied. "Our deadline was 9 o'clock. You have 15 minutes. "I will clear it today." "That is not acceptable. The deadline is 9 o'clock. We are here to document your continued violation." She held up her phone and took a photo of me, then turned and took several photos of my snow-covered walkway. "This is ridiculous," I said. "This is enforcement of community standards," Patricia replied. "Margaret, please note the time and date." Margaret, a thin woman in her 50s with severe features, made a note on a tablet. 8:47 a.m., February 12th, resident remains in violation. "We will be filing our petition with the county court this afternoon," Patricia continued. "You will be served with official notice of our intent to pursue eviction and property lien. Additionally, your total fines now stand at $2,500, due immediately. Failure to pay will result in additional penalties of $100 per day, plus interest." "You are being unreasonable," I said, keeping my voice level. "There was a state of emergency." "The HOA covenants supersede weather conditions," Patricia said. "You agreed to maintain your property to community standards. You have failed repeatedly. This is not personal, Mr. Xavier. This is about maintaining property values for all residents." Robert, a heavy-set man with a red face, nodded. "We cannot make exceptions. Everyone else manages to comply." "Not everyone else had emergency work responsibilities during the storm," I pointed out. "Then perhaps you should consider whether this neighborhood is the right fit for your lifestyle," Patricia said coldly. "Meadowbrook Village is a community for people who take pride in their homes and their commitments. We have standards. If you cannot meet them, there are other places to live." Something in her tone pushed me past my limit. I had been patient. I had been diplomatic. I had tried to work within their system, but this was beyond reason. "Patricia," I said quietly. "Do you know who I am?" She blinked. "You are Samuel Xavier, resident of 4782 Maple Ridge Drive and a person in violation of multiple HOA covenants." "I am also Samuel Xavier, mayor of Millbrook Heights." There was a moment of silence. Margaret looked up from her tablet. Robert's red face went a shade paler. Patricia's expression did not change. "I do not care if you are the governor," she said. "The HOA rules apply to everyone equally." "I am not asking for special treatment," I said. "I am pointing out that your enforcement is unreasonable and potentially illegal. You are threatening eviction during a state of emergency for a violation that could not reasonably be corrected during an active blizzard. You are creating dangerous conditions by demanding people shovel during a level 3 snow emergency, and you are abusing your authority as HOA president." "We are following the covenants exactly as written," Patricia insisted, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe, or calculation. "The covenants do not supersede state emergency declarations or reasonable safety concerns," I replied. "And as mayor, I can tell you that if anyone had been injured or killed trying to shovel their walkway during the storm yesterday, the town would have been looking very carefully at who was pressuring residents to engage in dangerous activity." "Are you threatening me?" Patricia demanded. "I am informing you of the legal reality. You are not above the law, Patricia. The HOA is not above the law. And if you pursue this frivolous eviction action, I will fight it, and I will win, and the HOA will be liable for my legal costs as well as potential damages for harassment." Margaret and Robert exchanged glances. Patricia's jaw tightened. "We will see what the court says," she said. "Come on." The three of them turned and walked back to Patricia's SUV. I watched them drive away, then closed the door and leaned against it again. Max whined. "I know," I said. That probably was not the smartest way to handle it. But I was tired of being bullied. I had tried diplomacy. I had tried compliance. Nothing satisfied Patricia Henderson. She wanted control and she wanted me gone. I spent the next hour shoveling my walkway, clearing a neat path from my driveway to my front door. By the time I finished, I was sweating despite the cold, and my back ached. I took a photo of the cleared walkway with the timestamp visible and emailed it to my attorney with a brief explanation of the situation. My attorney, David Muller, called me back within 20 minutes. "Sam, this is insane," he said. "They cannot evict you for this." That is what I told them. "Let me make some calls. If they actually file the petition, we will fight it aggressively. This is harassment, plain and simple. Do you have documentation of all the violations they have cited?" "I have every notice they have sent me." "Good. Forward them all to me." "I want to review the HOA covenants too. Get me a copy." "Will do. Thanks, David." "No problem. Try not to worry. This is not going anywhere." I felt slightly better after talking to David, but I knew Patricia was not going to let this go. She had been challenged, and people like her did not back down gracefully. The emergency town council meeting at 2 o'clock went smoothly. We reviewed the storm response, approved overtime pay for the emergency workers, and discussed preparations for the next potential storm system moving in later in the week. The council members were all aware of my HOA situation because news traveled fast in a town like Millbrook Heights, but they were professional enough not to bring it up during the meeting. Afterward, Rachel Torres caught me in the hallway. "Sam, I heard about the HOA thing," she said. "That is crazy." "It is what it is," I replied. "I have a lawyer handling it. Patricia Henderson is on the planning commission, you know." I did know. Patricia had her fingers in multiple aspects of town governance, always angling for more influence and control. "That might get awkward," Rachel said carefully. "If she wants to make it awkward, that is her choice. I have been nothing but professional with her. She is the one escalating." Rachel nodded. "Just watch your back. Patricia is connected. She knows a lot of people." "So do I," said, more confidently than I felt. Over the next week, I received official notice of the HOA's petition. They were seeking a lien against my property for unpaid fines totaling $2,500, plus an additional $1,500 in penalties. They were also requesting a court order requiring me to comply with all HOA covenants or face eviction proceedings. The court date was set for March 15th, a month away. David filed our response, denying the allegations and counterclaiming for harassment and abuse of process. We included documentation of the state of emergency, the Level 3 snow emergency declaration, and expert testimony from a cardiologist about the dangers of snow shoveling in extreme cold conditions. We also included records of my employment as mayor, showing my emergency responsibilities during the storm. Patricia escalated as well. She sent notices to all Meadowbrook Village residents, announcing the lawsuit and warning that failure to maintain community standards would result in similar enforcement actions. She painted me as a scofflaw threatening property values. Several neighbors stopped talking to me. One left a nasty note on my door, but others reached out in support. Jennifer Martin, who lived 2 doors down, knocked on my door with a casserole and an apology. "I think what Patricia is doing is wrong," she said. "A lot of us do. But we are afraid to speak up because she will come after us next." "I understand," I said. "I do not expect anyone to put themselves at risk. If you need a witness or something, let me know," Jennifer said. "I saw you leave during the storm. I know you were working. And I saw Patricia out there taking pictures while the snow was still coming down." It was vindictive. Her words meant more than she probably knew. It was easy to feel isolated when facing someone like Patricia, who wielded institutional power and social pressure as weapons. As the court date approached, more information came to light. David's investigation into the HOA's finances revealed some concerning patterns. Patricia had been assessing fines aggressively across the entire community, not just against me. The HOA had collected over $40,000 in fines in the past year alone. But the HOA's financial reports showed very little actual spending on community improvements or maintenance. "Where is the money going?" I asked David during one of our preparation meetings. "That is the question," he said. "The reports are vague: general administrative costs, legal reserves, management fees, but nothing specific. Can we subpoena detailed financial records? We can try. The judge might allow it given the pattern of aggressive enforcement." We filed the motion. Patricia opposed it vigorously, claiming HOA financial records were private and protected. But the judge, noting the severity of the proposed penalties and the countersuit for harassment, granted our request. What we discovered was enlightening. Patricia had been paying herself a substantial management fee as HOA president. $20,000 per year, approved by a vote of the HOA board, meaning Patricia, Margaret, and Robert had voted to pay Patricia a salary that was never disclosed to the general membership. Additionally, the HOA had been paying a landscaping company owned by Robert's son, and a cleaning service for the community clubhouse owned by Margaret's daughter. None of these financial arrangements had been disclosed to the HOA membership. The annual budgets presented at meetings showed only general line items, not the specific payments. "This is self-dealing," David said. "It might even be fraud. Can we use this in our case?" "Absolutely. It goes to Patricia's credibility and motivations. She is not a disinterested party enforcing neutral rules. She is protecting a lucrative arrangement by maintaining absolute control over the HOA. The night before the court hearing, I was at home reviewing my testimony when my phone rang. It was Tom Chen. "Sam, you need to see something," he said. "Can you meet me at the town hall? Now, it is almost 8 o'clock. Trust me. You need to see this." I drove to the town hall where Tom was waiting in his office with a stack of documents. "I have been reviewing permit applications like you asked," he said. "You know, looking for anything Patricia Henderson might have filed, I found something interesting." He spread the documents across his desk. They were permit applications for major construction projects in Meadowbrook Village, including a new community center, pool renovation, and landscaping redesign. Total project value over $500,000. "I do not understand," I said. "These were never approved." "Exactly," Tom said. "Patricia submitted these applications 3 years ago. The Planning Commission, which she sits on, approved them, but she never pulled the permits. The projects never happened. Why not? That is the question. But look at this." He pulled out another document. "This is a loan application the HOA submitted to Millbrook Community Bank. They borrowed $400,000 to fund these projects. But if the projects never happened, where did the money go?" Tom pointed to another document. "The loan was approved and dispersed. The HOA has been making payments on it, but there is no record of any construction projects actually being completed." I stared at the papers, my mind racing. "We need to get this to my attorney. I made copies for you. I am not sure if it is relevant to your case, but it seemed like you should know." "Tom, this might be exactly what we need. Thank you." I called David immediately. He was as excited as a lawyer could be. "This changes everything," he said. "If Patricia diverted HOA loan funds for personal use, that is embezzlement. That is a crime. Should we go to the police? Not yet. Let's present this at the hearing tomorrow. Let Patricia respond under oath. Then, depending on what she says, we can decide whether to involve law enforcement." I did not sleep well that night. My mind kept running through scenarios, trying to anticipate how Patricia would react when confronted with the evidence. She was smart and ruthless. She would not go down without a fight. The courthouse in downtown Millbrook Heights was a grand old building with marble floors and high ceilings. David and I arrived early and set up in one of the smaller courtrooms designated for civil matters. Patricia arrived with her attorney, Marcus Webb, a slick personal injury lawyer known for aggressive tactics. Judge Ellen Morrison presided. She was in her 60s, with a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency and a low tolerance for frivolous litigation. Patricia's attorney went first, presenting the HOA's case. He described my violations in great detail, emphasizing my repeated failures to comply with notices. He painted me as a scofflaw who thought the rules did not apply to him. "Mr. Xavier has shown a pattern of disregard for community standards," Webb argued. "He parks on the street, he allows his grass to grow too long, and he refuses to maintain his walkway. The HOA has been patient, issuing notice after notice, offering opportunities to comply. But Mr. Xavier believes he is above the rules. The HOA seeks only to enforce the covenants that all residents agreed to when they purchased their properties. The law is clear. HOAs have the authority to enforce covenants, assess fines, and place liens. We ask the court to grant the lien and order Mr. Xavier to comply or face eviction." Judge Morrison listened without expression, taking notes. When Webb finished, she turned to David. "Mr. Muller, your response." David stood. "Your Honor, this case is not about covenant enforcement. This case is about harassment, retaliation, and abuse of authority. The specific incident that triggered this lawsuit involved my client's failure to shovel his walkway during an active blizzard while the state was under an emergency declaration. The governor had declared a Level 3 snow emergency. Non-essential travel was prohibited. Yet Miss Henderson demanded my client risk his life to shovel snow, and when he did not, she threatened immediate eviction. The snowfall had ceased, Webb interrupted. The storm was ongoing, David countered. I have meteorological data showing continuous snowfall through the evening. But more importantly, I have evidence that this enforcement action is pretextual. Miss Henderson is not enforcing neutral rules. She is targeting my client because he challenged her authority. And the reason she is so protective of that authority is because she has been using the HOA for personal financial gain. That got Patricia's attention. She leaned forward, whispering urgently to Webb. Judge Morrison raised her eyebrows. That is a serious allegation, Mr. Mueller. I hope you have evidence. I do, Your Honor. David spent the next hour presenting our case. He showed the pattern of fines assessed against me for trivial violations. He showed the evidence of the state of emergency and my duties as mayor during the storm. Then he presented the financial documents. Miss Henderson has been paying herself a $20,000 annual salary that was never disclosed to HOA members, David said. The HOA has also been directing contracts to companies owned by family members of board members. And most significantly, the HOA obtained a $400,000 loan for construction projects that were never completed. The loan was approved 3 years ago. The money was disbursed, but there is no record of any construction. Judge Morrison looked at Patricia. Miss Henderson, you will have an opportunity to respond, but I am going to need to see detailed financial records for the HOA. All of them. Webb stood. Your Honor, this is a fishing expedition. The HOA's finances are not relevant to the question of whether Mr. Xavier violated the covenants. They are relevant to the question of whether this enforcement action is legitimate or retaliatory, Judge Morrison replied. And given the amounts involved, I am concerned there may be criminal conduct. Miss Henderson, I am ordering you to produce complete financial records for the Meadowbrook Village HOA for the past 5 years. You have 1 week. We will reconvene at that time. Patricia's face was pale. She stood abruptly. Your Honor, this is outrageous. We are the victims here. Mr. Xavier is trying to deflect from his own violations. Sit down, Miss Henderson, Judge Morrison said sharply. You will have your opportunity to present evidence at the next hearing, but I am troubled by what I have seen today. If you have nothing to hide, the financial records will clear this up quickly. Court is adjourned until March 22nd. We filed out of the courtroom. Patricia and Webb rushed past without making eye contact. David clapped me on the shoulder. That went better than I expected, he said. What happens now? Now we wait and see if Patricia produces the records. My guess is she's going to try to stall or claim they are lost or incomplete. But the judge is not going to have patience for that. If Patricia does not comply, Morrison will hold her in contempt. And if she does comply, then we get to see exactly where that $400,000 went. And if it went where I think it went, Patricia is going to have much bigger problems than an HOA dispute. Over the next week, I tried to focus on my regular mayoral duties, but the HOA situation was always in the back of my mind. Then, 5 days after the hearing, I received a call from David. Patricia filed a motion to dismiss the entire case, he said. She is claiming she made an error in the original petition, and that upon further review, the HOA is withdrawing all claims against you. Just like that, just like that. She is also waiving all fines and penalties. She wants this to go away. What about the financial records? That is the interesting part. Her motion argues that since the case is being dismissed, the financial records are no longer relevant. She is hoping the judge will just let the whole thing drop. Will she? Not if I have anything to say about it, David said. I have already filed an opposition. Judge Morrison ordered those records produced. Patricia does not get to ignore a court order just because she is trying to dismiss the case. Plus, we still have our countersuit for harassment. That is not going away just because she dropped her claims. The hearing on Patricia's motion to dismiss was scheduled for March 22nd as originally planned. This time, the courtroom was more crowded. Word had spread about the HOA dispute, and several Meadowbrook Village residents attended, along with a reporter from the Millbrook Heights Gazette. Judge Morrison was clearly not pleased when she took the bench. "Miss Henderson," she said, "I ordered you to produce financial records. Where are they?" Webb stood. "Your Honor, given that we have dismissed our claims and withdrawn all penalties against Mr. Xavier, we believe the financial records are no longer pertinent to this matter." "I disagree," Judge Morrison said. "When this court orders the production of documents, those documents get produced. You do not get to avoid compliance by dismissing your case, and Mr. Muller's countersuit is still active, which means discovery continues." "Where are the records, Miss Henderson?" Patricia stood slowly. "Your Honor, I have been unable to locate complete records for all 5 years. Unable or unwilling? Unable. Some of the records were kept by previous board members. Some may have been lost during an office move." "How convenient," Judge Morrison said dryly. "Miss Henderson, I am giving you 1 more week to produce whatever records you can find. And I am strongly suggesting you consult with an attorney about your obligations here, because if I find you are intentionally withholding documents, I will hold you in contempt. You understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Good. 1 week. March 29th, and Miss Henderson, I am also going to ask that the HOA schedule a special meeting of all residents to discuss these financial discrepancies. They have a right to know where their money is going." Patricia's face flushed red. "Your Honor, that is not within the court's authority." "You are right," Judge Morrison agreed. "I cannot order you to hold a meeting, but I can make my concerns part of the public record, and I suspect your residents will insist on one once they read about this in the newspaper. Am I clear?" Patricia sat down without responding. Judge Morrison adjourned the hearing. As we left the courthouse, several Meadowbrook Village residents approached me. Jennifer Martin was there, along with 3 other neighbors I recognized. "Is it true?" Jennifer asked. "Has Patricia been stealing from the HOA?" "I do not know yet," I said honestly, "but there are financial irregularities that need to be explained." "We want a special meeting," another resident said. "Can you help us organize it?" "I am a resident just like you," I said. "But yes, I can help." The HOA bylaws should have provisions for residents calling a special meeting if enough people request it. "We will get the signatures," Jennifer said. "Thank you for standing up to her. We should have done it years ago." Over the next week, the Meadowbrook Village residents organized. Jennifer collected signatures from over 60% of the homeowners, requesting a special meeting to review HOA finances and consider removing Patricia from the board. The bylaws required only 20%, so there was no question the meeting would have to be held. Patricia tried to delay, but the residents were insistent. The meeting was scheduled for April 5th at the community clubhouse. Meanwhile, David continued pressing for the financial records. Patricia provided some documents, but they were incomplete and raised more questions than they answered. Bank statements showed large withdrawals categorized as construction expenses, but no corresponding invoices or receipts. Checks were written to a company called Meadowbrook Management Services, but that company had no website, no business license on file with the county, and no identifiable employees other than Patricia herself. "This is a shell company," David said. "Patricia was writing checks to herself." "Is that illegal?" "If she did not disclose it and get proper authorization, yes. It is embezzlement." "Should we go to the police now?" David considered. "Let's wait until after the special meeting. Give Patricia a chance to explain. If she cannot provide a legitimate explanation, then we will involve law enforcement." The special meeting was packed. Over 200 residents filled the community clubhouse, with more standing outside. Patricia sat at the front with Margaret and Robert, all three looking grim. Jennifer Martin, acting as a concerned resident, called the meeting to order and explained the purpose: to review HOA finances and determine whether the board had properly managed community funds. "Miss Henderson," Jennifer said, "can you explain the $400,000 loan the HOA obtained 3 years ago?" Patricia stood. "That loan was approved by the board for necessary infrastructure improvements." "What improvements?" someone called out. "A new community center, pool renovation, and landscaping redesign." "But those projects were never completed," Jennifer said. "Where did the money go?" "The projects were deferred due to cost overruns and permitting issues," Patricia said. "The funds are being held in reserve." "Show us the bank statements," another resident demanded. Patricia hesitated. "The current balance in the reserve account is approximately $50,000. The room erupted. People shouted questions. Where was the other $350,000? How could that much money disappear? Patricia tried to maintain control. "If you would let me explain how you stole from us," someone yelled. "I did not steal anything," Patricia shouted back. "The money was spent on legitimate HOA expenses, management fees, legal costs, administrative expenses. $20,000 a year to yourself." Jennifer said, holding up a printed bank statement. "You have been paying yourself a salary that none of us authorized. The board authorized it. The board is you, Margaret and Robert. You voted to pay yourselves and your family members. That is self-dealing." The meeting dissolved into chaos. Residents demanded Patricia's resignation. Patricia refused, claiming she had done nothing wrong. Security, in the form of a single retired police officer hired for HOA events, looked completely overwhelmed. I had stayed quiet until then, sitting in the back and observing. But when Patricia started threatening to have residents removed from the meeting for disorderly conduct, I stood. "Patricia," I called out. The room quieted, people recognizing me. "You need to resign. This has gone far enough." "I will not be lectured by someone who cannot even shovel his walkway," Patricia shot back. "You tried to evict me during a state of emergency because I would not risk my life to shovel snow," I replied. "And you did it because I questioned your authority. You have been running this HOA like a personal fiefdom, enriching yourself and your friends while squeezing residents with excessive fines for trivial violations. It ends now." "You have no authority here," Patricia said. "You are just another resident." "He is the mayor," someone called out. "I do not care if he is the president," Patricia snapped. "This is an HOA matter, and it is also a criminal matter," David Muller said, standing up. He had been sitting near the front. "Miss Henderson, I have been representing Mr. Xavier in his lawsuit against the HOA. As part of that representation, I have reviewed financial records that show significant irregularities. I have consulted with the county prosecutor's office. They are prepared to open an investigation into potential embezzlement and fraud." Patricia went pale. "You are bluffing." "I am not." "You have one chance to come clean. Resign from the board, make full financial restitution, and cooperate with the investigation. If you do that, the prosecutor might consider a plea agreement. If you do not, you are going to be arrested." The room was dead silent. Everyone stared at Patricia. She looked at Margaret and Robert, but both of them looked away. "This is insane," Patricia whispered. "Resign," Jennifer said. "Now." Patricia looked around the room, seeing only hostile faces. Her entire power structure had collapsed in a matter of minutes. "Fine," she said finally. "I resign. All of you are ungrateful. I have spent years maintaining this community, keeping property values high, and this is how you treat me. You embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars," someone shouted. Patricia grabbed her bag and stormed out of the clubhouse. Margaret and Robert quickly followed. The meeting continued for another hour, with residents voting to install an interim board and to conduct a complete financial audit. They also voted to drop all outstanding fines and to suspend covenant enforcement until new, reasonable rules could be drafted. After the meeting ended, Jennifer approached me. "Thank you," she said. "We could not have done this without you." "You did the hard part," I said. "You organized. You demanded accountability. That is how communities should work." 2 days later, I received a call from County Prosecutor Angela Reeves. "Mayor Xavier," she said, "I wanted to update you on the Patricia Henderson matter. Based on the evidence your attorney provided, we have opened a formal investigation. Our forensic accountants are reviewing the HOA financial records." "What are you finding?" "Significant discrepancies. It appears Miss Henderson diverted at least $300,000 from the loan proceeds into accounts she controlled. She used some of it to pay herself and the other board members. Some went to contractors who did little or no actual work, and some appears to have been used for personal expenses. So it is embezzlement. Yes, we will be filing charges. Probably multiple counts of theft, fraud, and corrupt practices. Given the amounts involved, she is looking at serious prison time." "What about Margaret and Robert?" "They may face charges as well, depending on what the investigation reveals about their knowledge and involvement." But Patricia was clearly the ringleader. "When will you file charges?" "Within the next week or two. I wanted to give you a heads up since you are the one who brought this to light." 3 weeks later, Patricia Henderson was arrested at her home. The news made the front page of the Gazette and was covered by the local television stations. She was charged with 14 counts of theft, fraud, and engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity. Bail was set at $100,000. Margaret Danner and Robert Green were charged with lesser offenses, primarily related to their acceptance of unauthorized payments. They both agreed to cooperate with the prosecution in exchange for reduced charges. The Meadowbrook Village HOA hired a professional management company to handle day-to-day operations while the residents worked to reform their governance structure. The new interim board immediately suspended all pending fines and initiated a review of every enforcement action taken during Patricia's tenure. My own case was dismissed with prejudice, meaning it could not be refiled. The HOA issued a formal apology and offered to reimburse me for my legal fees. I accepted. Patricia's trial was scheduled for September. In the meantime, she tried to negotiate a plea deal, but Prosecutor Reeves was not interested in anything less than significant prison time. The amount of money involved and the breach of trust made this a serious case. On a warm evening in early June, I was sitting on my front porch with Max when Jennifer Martin walked by with her dog. "Evening, Mayor," she said with a smile. "Evening, Jennifer. Just Sam is fine. How are you holding up with all the craziness?" "I am good. It feels like things are finally settling down. The new management company is great. They actually responded to my email about the broken gate at the pool within an hour. Patricia never responded to anything." That is the difference between someone doing a job and someone protecting a scam, I said. Jennifer's dog, a small terrier, sniffed at Max, who tolerated it with good-natured patience. A bunch of us were talking, Jennifer said. We want to thank you properly, maybe a cookout or something. You took on Patricia when the rest of us were too scared. You stood up for what was right even when it put you at risk. I was just protecting my own interests, I said. You were protecting all of us. We just did not realize it at the time, I smiled. A cookout sounds nice. Let me know when. As Jennifer walked away, I leaned back in my chair and looked at my quiet street. The trees were full and green. Kids were riding bikes. Someone was grilling somewhere nearby, the smell of charcoal and cooking meat drifting on the breeze. This was what a neighborhood should be. People living their lives, not living in fear of petty tyrants with clipboards. My phone buzzed with a text from David Muller. He sent a link to an article about Patricia's case. The forensic accounting had revealed even more diverted funds. The total was now estimated at over $400,000. Patricia was facing up to 20 years in prison if convicted on all counts. I did not feel triumphant. I felt tired. The whole situation had been exhausting and unnecessary. If Patricia had just been reasonable, if she had treated people with basic respect, none of this would have happened. But she had built her identity around control and authority, and when that was threatened, she had doubled down rather than backing off. In late August, Patricia accepted a plea agreement. She pleaded guilty to 5 counts of theft and 1 count of engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity. In exchange, the other charges were dropped. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution of $400,000, though everyone knew she did not have that kind of money anymore. She had spent it. Margaret received probation and community service. Robert received a suspended sentence with the requirement that he cooperate fully with the restitution efforts. The Meadowbrook Village HOA underwent a complete restructuring. The new bylaws limited board authority, required transparent financial reporting, and created an appeals process for any enforcement actions. The community also voted to reduce the scope of covenant enforcement, focusing only on issues that genuinely affected property values or safety, not trivial matters like grass height or temporary parking. In September, the community held the cookout Jennifer had mentioned. It was a beautiful fall day and over 100 residents showed up. There was food, music, and kids running around playing. People talked and laughed. It felt like a real community for the first time since I had moved in. Rachel Torres, my deputy mayor, stopped by with her family. "This is nice," she said, looking around. "You turned a bad situation into something positive." "The residents did that," I said. "I just gave them a reason to act." "That is leadership," Rachel said. "You showed them it was possible to stand up to someone like Patricia. You gave them courage." "I was mostly just stubborn," I admitted. Rachel laughed. "Sometimes that is what leadership looks like." As the sun set and the party wound down, I found myself standing with a group of neighbors near the community pool. We were talking about nothing in particular: the weather, plans for fall football season starting. This was what I had wanted when I bought the house on Maple Ridge Drive. A place where I could be just another person, not the mayor, not a public figure, just a guy with a dog and a house and neighbors who became friends. Patricia Henderson had tried to take that away from me. She had used the HOA as a weapon, wielding rules and fines and threats to maintain control over people who should have been equals in a shared community. But she had failed, not just because she got caught embezzling, but because communities are stronger than petty tyrants. When people finally decide to stand together, the Patricias of the world do not stand a chance. Walking home that evening with Max trotting beside me, I felt genuinely content. My walkway was clear, not because some HOA notice demanded it, but because I had chosen to shovel it. My grass was mowed because I wanted a nice lawn, not because someone was threatening me with fines. Freedom is not just about big things like laws and rights. Sometimes it is about small things. The freedom to shovel your walk when it makes sense to shovel it. The freedom to live in your home without constant surveillance and harassment. The freedom to stand up and say no when someone tries to bully you. Patricia had learned that the hard way. She thought being HOA president gave her power over people. She thought rules and regulations and legal threats made her untouchable. She was wrong. And Meadowbrook Village was better for it. The story could have ended there, but there was one final chapter that needed to be written. In October, the HOA held its first annual meeting under the new bylaws. The interim board presented a complete financial report, showing exactly where every dollar had gone. The community was still dealing with the debt from Patricia's loan, but a plan was in place to pay it off over the next 10 years through modest, reasonable HOA dues. During the meeting, Jennifer Martin stood and nominated me for a position on the new permanent board. Xavier has proven himself to be a leader who puts community interests first, she said. He stood up when it mattered, and I think we would benefit from his experience and integrity on our board. I was surprised and touched, but I had to decline. I appreciate the confidence, I said, standing to address the room, but I already have a full-time job leading this town. I would rather be a regular resident here, someone who can just enjoy the community without the responsibilities of board service. This neighborhood needs fresh voices and new ideas. You do not need me on the board. You just need to remember what happened with Patricia and make sure it never happens again. The room applauded. Someone else was nominated, a retired teacher named Alan Foster who had lived in the neighborhood for 15 years. He was elected along with 4 other residents who were committed to transparent, reasonable governance. After the meeting, Alan approached me. "Thank you for not running," he said with a smile. "I would have hated to run against the mayor." "You are going to do great," I assured him. "Just remember, the HOA serves the residents, not the other way around." "I will remember." "And Sam, seriously, thank you. You changed this place." Over the following months, life in Meadowbrook Village returned to a comfortable normalcy. The new board focused on actual community improvement projects, fixing the pool pump, repainting the clubhouse, updating the playground equipment. They did not hassle residents about minor violations. They treated people with respect. I continued my work as mayor, dealing with the usual challenges of running a small city. But my home life was peaceful in a way it had not been since I moved in. In December, the first major snowstorm of the season hit Millbrook Heights. I watched the weather forecasts and coordinated with emergency services as the snow began falling. By evening, we had 8 inches with more coming. I went out after dinner and shoveled my walkway. Not because anyone demanded it, not because I was afraid of fines, just because it needed to be done. As I worked, Alan Foster came by with his snow blower. "Want some help?" he called over the engine noise. "Sure," I said, grateful. We cleared my walkway and driveway in 10 minutes, then moved on to help Jennifer with hers. Soon, several other neighbors joined in, and we spent the next hour helping the elderly residents on the street clear their properties. This was what community should be. People helping each other because they want to, not because some rule says they have to. That night, sitting by the fireplace with Max curled up at my feet, I thought about the long, strange journey that had started with an orange notice flapping on my door during a blizzard. Patricia Henderson had tried to use the HOA to bully me into submission. Instead, she had revealed her own corruption and brought about her own downfall. The community was stronger for it, more united and more aware of the importance of accountability and transparency. I had learned some things too. I learned that sometimes being stubborn is the right choice. I learned that fighting back against petty tyrants is not just about protecting yourself, it is about protecting everyone who might come after you. I learned that real leadership is not about wielding authority, it is about standing up when something is wrong, even when it is hard or risky. Most importantly, I learned that a good community is not built on rigid rules and aggressive enforcement. It is built on mutual respect, reasonable expectations, and people who care about each other more than they care about having perfect lawns and pristine walkways. Meadowbrook Village was finally that kind of community, and I was proud to call it home. The legal aftermath continued for months. The HOA's insurance company, after initially denying coverage, eventually agreed to pay a significant portion of the restitution, though the community would still be paying off debt for years. Patricia filed an appeal of her sentence, but it was denied. She began serving her 8-year prison term at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. Several other HOAs in the region contacted Meadowbrook Village to learn about our reforms. Jennifer and Alan started giving presentations at HOA conferences about the importance of transparency and accountability. They became minor celebrities in the world of homeowner association governance reform. As for me, I was re-elected mayor the following November in a landslide. During the campaign, my opponent tried to make an issue of the HOA lawsuit, claiming I was divisive and litigious. It did not work. The voters knew the real story. They knew I had stood up against corruption and abuse of power. On the 1-year anniversary of that first orange notice appearing on my door, I was walking Max through the neighborhood when I ran into Jennifer. "Can you believe it has been a year?" she asked. "Feels like a lifetime ago," I said. "The neighborhood is so different now. People actually like living here." "That is how it should be," Jennifer smiled. "You know what is funny? I was actually thinking about moving before all this happened. I was so tired of Patricia and her constant harassment. I had started looking at houses in other areas." "What made you stay?" "You. Watching you stand up to her made me realize that we did not have to accept it. We could change things. And we did." I did not know what to say to that. It was humbling to think that my stubbornness and refusal to back down had inspired others to take action. "I am glad you stayed," I said finally. "This place needs people like you." "We all need each other," Jennifer replied. "That is what makes a community work." She was right, of course. No one person could have changed Meadowbrook Village. It took dozens of residents standing together, supporting each other and demanding better. I was just the catalyst. They were the real heroes. As I walked home with Max, I passed my mailbox and saw that there was something inside. For a moment, my stomach clenched, expecting another orange notice, but it was just a flyer for the neighborhood holiday party. The new board was organizing a Christmas celebration at the clubhouse with food, music, and a visit from Santa for the kids. I smiled and tucked the flyer into my pocket. This was what an HOA should be doing. Bringing people together, creating community, making the neighborhood a better place to live, not hassling people about grass height or threatening eviction over snow during a blizzard. Never again. Not in my neighborhood. Not on my watch. And that is how a simple dispute over an unshoveled walkway exposed corruption, took down a tyrant, and transformed a community. It is a reminder that sometimes the smallest stands for principle can have the biggest impacts. Sometimes refusing to be bullied, even over something as trivial as snow removal, can reveal larger truths and create positive change. Patricia Henderson thought she had power, because she had a title and some rules to enforce. But real power belongs to communities that stand together for what is right. Real power is not about control. It is about courage, and Meadowbrook Village had finally found its courage. As for me, I learned that being mayor of the town was not that different from being just another resident of a neighborhood. In both cases, the job was the same. Stand up for what is right, fight for fairness, and never let bullies win. It was a good lesson. One I would carry with me for the rest of my life. And I would never look at an HOA notice the same way again.